I saw a post the other day about health savings accounts, or HSAs for short, on a retirement planning forum the other day with a few questions, and I thought it would be a good topic to cover today. I'm Elliot Apple, founder and financial planner of Kindness Financial Planning, and today I'm excited to talk about HSAs because they are an often underutilized strategy. When I talk with folks, they're often either not using them if they have access to them, or they're not using them properly or not taking full advantage of them, and they end up potentially paying more in taxes later. So let's dive into it. An HSA is a type of investment account or potentially bank account that can be used for qualified medical expenses now or down the road. Although the only way to gain access to this is to have a high deductible health plan. So you can't make contributions to an HSA unless you have a qualifying high deductible health plan. There are some key calculations that go into that are a little bit more complicated. I'm not going to go into that today, but suffice it to say, you should determine whether a normal health plan or a high deductible health plan is best for you. But if you've already made that determination, we can talk a little bit more about how to use the HSA. HSAs are one of my favorite types of accounts because they're triple tax advantage. Contributions go in with a tax deduction, and then earnings grow tax deferred, and withdrawals can be made tax-free for qualified medical expenses. So you get the best of a pre-tax retirement account and a Roth IRA when you make contributions to an HSA, and then you take them out for qualified medical expenses. So a simple example, let's say you're in the 32% federal marginal tax bracket. If you make a $100 contribution to an HSA, you'll likely save about $32. So pretty good tax savings. You can scale that up or down. There are different limits to make contributions to HSAs. Those change on a yearly basis, and they are going up for 2024. So double check that each year to make sure that you are maxing that out if you're eligible and able to. That way you can take full advantage of that tax deduction. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make with HSAs is they'll make a contribution, maybe their employer provides a match for choosing that type of plan, and then they leave it in the bank account. And it's earning very little interest, maybe 0.01%, 0.5%, something really low. Inflation is eating away at the value of that, or they're spending from it for current expenses, which there's nothing wrong with that because you're still getting the tax deduction going in and then taking that money out tax-free for qualified medical expenses. But there is a better way. Oftentimes when I'm working with clients, we talk about spending from cash flow from their current income or from other assets to pay for medical expenses and allowing the HSA to grow. Now you may be wondering, how's an HSA going to grow if I have in a bank account earning basically nothing? Well, that's where we need to take some proactive steps here. Oftentimes, if there are investment options within your current HSA, you could select those and start investing for the future. And I like to personally position these accounts for decades plus down the line. I am not worried that I will have medical expenses later, or for my retired clients that they will have medical expenses later. Everybody seems to have medical expenses that they can pay for. And there's a lot of flexibility with what qualifies as qualified medical expenses. So that's not a worry of mine. So I am trying to invest that for 10, 20, 30 years down the road and invest that really as aggressively as possible because it's money I don't anticipate touching for a very long period of time, or my clients don't anticipate touching for a very long period of time. But what you can do is you can make those contributions, invest them, select something that's appropriate for you, and then spend from your current expenses. So if your plan has great investment options, choose that. Or if they don't have any investment options or they're high expenses, you could roll your HSA yearly or on some other schedule to a different HSA that has lower fees and better investment options. Now you have to weigh what is the transfer fee from your current HSA to another. That's why maybe you want to do this once per year as opposed to once per month as an example. That might be a little too frequently and cause high expenses there. But you could roll that out. I do usually recommend keeping the contributions within the HSA of your employer because one, you're getting the federal tax deduction, but then also you're getting payroll tax deductions on that. Whereas if you make contributions outside of your own employer's HSA, you'll miss out on the payroll tax deductions. You'll still get the federal tax deduction, but again, you're missing out on the payroll one. So oftentimes for most people, it makes sense to continue those contributions to the employer one and then roll it out to another HSA that has better investment options and invest that for the long term. This is one of the greatest things you can do, just because if you make consistent contributions each year, either under an individual or a family plan, and then you invest that aggressively over time in retirement, you might have tens or potentially even hundreds of thousands of dollars in the HSA later on to pay for medical expenses. And so it can be a very powerful planning vehicle instead of spending from it or letting it sit in a bank account. So don't let that be you. The key to making this work is to make sure that you save receipts for medical expenses now, so you can always reimburse yourself down the road for medical expenses you've had since you've opened the HSA. So if you open an HSA today, and let's say 20 years from now, you want to take a distribution or withdrawal from the HSA for something that happened 10 years ago, you could, but you need to have proof of that and you haven't taken a tax deduction for it. So what I normally recommend is take a picture of any receipts for medical expenses, throw it in a digital folder, whichever one you use that's backed up to the cloud. And potentially, if you want to make this even a little more technical or easier on yourself later, have a spreadsheet, categorize it by year, drop in a spreadsheet and say exactly what you spent the money on and the amount, and that way you have a sum total for the year that if you need to look 10 or 20 years from now, one, you have the documentation if you ever get audited, but then you can easily pull the amount and know from the spreadsheet what that amount could be. So it makes it really easy on yourself later. So there are a few steps that you need to take here to make it easier on your future self. But again, a very powerful planning vehicle to get the tax deduction today, allow it to compound and grow tax deferred for a long period of time, and take it out tax-free for qualified medical expenses later. The nice thing is also, if you decide past age 65 that you don't want to take it out for qualified medical expenses, you can take withdrawals from an HSA and you're not going to face the 20% penalty anymore, but it will be taxable as ordinary income. So to the extent that you have the qualified medical expenses and you've been tracking them, better to take it out for that. So in summary, an HSA is a very, very powerful planning vehicle if used properly. So if you have access to one, go back, listen to this video and see, are you taking all the steps to maximize it for you and your family? Thanks for watching. Enjoy.